Hello and welcome back to another episode of Raw and Real with Stefanie Fernandes. I'm Stefanie, your podcast host, rapid transformational therapist, and founder of Your Freedom program. I work with women who want to take back their life, returning to themselves on their healing journey. In this podcast, we give the stage to women who overcame adversity and trauma or difficult phases in their life. Be ready to get raw emotions from real people. The stories we share here are to inspire women just like you that anything is possible. In today's episode, we will be talking about the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on mental health. First detected in December 19, with an estimated 6 million deaths worldwide, according to the World Health Organization, COVID-19 has exposed persistent inequalities by income, age, race, sex, and geographic location. People still face complex and interconnected threats to their health and well-being, rooted deeply in social, economic, political, and environmental aspects to their health. The impact on mental health is wide-ranging. Grieving the loss of a loved one, isolation, loss of income can trigger mental health conditions or exacerbating existing mental health conditions. Many people may be facing increased levels of alcohol and drug use, insomnia, and anxiety. My guest today is Lisa Zimmermann. Lisa just published a book, a collection of emotions and feelings of her journey, having felt the negative psychological effects in response to the pandemic. It not only shares the different layers and categories of these effects from a very personal perspective, but most of all, it creates a safe environment and space. Her aim is that her book, Pandemic Phoenix, is seen as a reflection ground to identify similar effects within themselves, not only to acknowledge these negative mental patterns, but move away from the toxic spirals. Hi, Lisa, and thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Hello, and thank you so much for having me. It's an honor to be on your show and to be talking to you about this important topic.
Yeah, you are also a fellow hypnotherapist. You're a mental health expert.
I am.
And yeah, you provide, what you do is amazing. You provide psychological care in the form of online consultations and virtual mental health solutions. So it's really accessible, your service. This is amazing.
Thank you. Yeah, we're also colleagues in our field, right? So we both are trained RDT therapists. And obviously with that have gained such a value in our lives and such a powerful method to help people. It fascinates me every day how this hybrid approach of integrating neuroscience, hypnotherapy, CBT, NLP, even aspects of talk therapy, how all of that combined, especially in my one-on-one work with clients, is just such a powerful tool and creates such a immediate transformation and gives you such a powerful tool to really, really dig for the core of an issue. And honestly, every single time I have a session with a client, I'm just mesmerized by the effect after the session. And you would understand that, right? Diving into a session, it's even an excitement. Of course, it's a negative topic you're dealing with, but an excitement of knowing we're going to get to the core and you have no idea what's going to come up. And every single time, the really relevant aspect then comes up.
Yeah, and it's extremely rewarding because it's so solution oriented, isn't it?
It is. And I mean, it definitely has, for me, I mean, obviously today we're talking about the book. First of all, of course, to the audience, a very big hello. I'm really great to connect with all of you and really happy to be here. I'm right now actually in Cape Town, so I've relocated from my home in Germany, born and raised in Germany, but by now moved to Cape Town, which is also part of my big story, which I touch upon in the book. I don't want to take away too much at this point, so I won't be diving too deep into that, but all of that comes together in a really important way, because obviously the pandemic and the start of crisis times, and my book is called Pandemic Phoenix, but I always emphasize that it's not, don't be fooled by the title, I always say, because it's just called Pandemic Phoenix. I just use my story and the pandemic phase in my life as an example, but it really is a story about crisis times. Yeah. So it is a story about you losing the connection to yourself. It is a story about you very slowly drifting off into that spiral. And that is also the very hidden danger behind it, because these psychological effects, when negative times happen in our lives, they remain so hidden and they happen so in such a hidden way. And when we then finally realize it or start realizing it or start acknowledging it, then it's already quite late. And I always keep re-emphasizing throughout the book as well, that if you have gained some mental strategies already, then you might have your fighting chance. But if you haven't, then it's going to be really tough. And that is one big lesson that I can already share with everyone that I have gained throughout this time, that it's about having these skills. It's about teaching yourself these mental strategies, because they are also in everyday life, are actually giving you the everyday fighting chance to go through your life without being impacted by everything that's surrounding you.
So with the rise of the pandemic, you have actually placed a particular focus on opening up the conversation around the hidden psychological effects of this pandemic. How did you experience it, the pandemic?
Yeah, I have. That started at some point last year when I had regained enough strength to actually be able to reflect on it and to talk about it. And that's when I started really making this my mission to collaborate with universities, to also work together with bigger business networks, to do keynotes and workshops around this topic, just to create awareness around it, just to start the conversation. For me personally, how I experienced it is that I was this crazy global citizen just traveling the world. I had just left my job in November 2019, so right before everything came crashing down at us. And I had worked towards that point of leaving my job for ages. And we all know creating big change in life, how much energy that costs you and how much you will have to invest to get yourself to that point. So that's the point I found myself at. From there on, for the next 4 months until March 2020, when the pandemic really became public, I was just crazy traveling the world. I was just living my best life, making everything out of every day, creating days that felt like weeks. That's what I always measure my quality of life at. To really, how do you work with time? What does time for you feel like? Do you live days that really feel like weeks? Or is a week just passing you by like that? And you can use that, that's my scale, to assess whether I am right now living my own desires, whether I'm actually doing something that's filling my soul and my heart. And those 4 months were crazy amazing. And then the pandemic started, and then that forced me to stay in Germany for a long time. I had actually planned to go back to South Africa because I'd already visited South Africa before that, and then was forced to stay in Germany. And that actually left me staying there for a whole year. And I can't even recall when I ever was in Germany for a whole year. So there were so many different factors in effect here that challenged me on very deep levels. And in the beginning, I didn't quite realize it because there were so many changing things around me that I had to deal with, which is also what I always bring up now when I'm saying we need to open up this conversation now, because we were all busy the first year, the first 1.5 years, we were all busy adapting to change and getting used to change. And we didn't have time to open up our minds to this conversation. We didn't have time, and definitely not the energy, to really, really think about this, to really reflect on ourselves, because this is painful work. This takes a lot of energy to do this, but it's the only way through. And little by little, then I realized that something was severely wrong, and that this glowing person, this glowing, crazy traveler who was in love with life, was just leaving me and was just suddenly not there anymore. And that left me in a state where I was feeling extremely numb and just constantly spiraling. I was losing so deeply the connection to myself. I've experienced that before in states when really big changes were happening in my life, when you're just feeling like you're floating above yourself. because you cannot quite feel yourself living your life. And little by little, then observing these effects, I realized that something was severely wrong and that I really needed to take a move to get me out of that state.
So how did you get out of it?
Definitely with my mental wisdom that I had gained up until that point. So I mean, my journey with that started like 8 or 9 years ago. I always keep sharing this story, saying that's when I picked up my first book and that's when I kicked it off. So I always keep saying, you either want to start this kind of work or you don't. But it's not a thing that you just do once and then it's checked off the list. But it's like you either find this big growth potential in your life, and it is such a feeling of aliveness. I cannot emphasize that enough. Before I started working with my mind, my life was a gradual up and down, just like that. That's how I always explain it. But since I started, yes, I find myself down here as well, but I allow myself to reach these peaks really high up here. And those peaks are the most beautiful feeling of aliveness that I would never want to miss. And because of that, I always keep fighting for whenever I find myself in the dips. I always keep fighting because I know that I am producing the most beautiful life for myself.
Yeah.
So the mental strategies were definitely a big baseline that I was operating on. And then just really, really hanging in there and really, really just giving myself the time, not pushing myself too much in moments when I know I couldn't take it, but at the same time, gradually moving out of the spiral. I describe that in my book by saying, and kind of like working with this image of saying, if you're finding yourself in this spiral and you're trying to swim out of it too fast, then you're just going to get super tired and it's just going to suck you back in. But if you take the small steps and if you slowly adapt your path and change it a bit and change the direction a bit, then it's going to smoothly carry you out of that spiral. Yeah. And that is basically, figuratively speaking, how I then over a longer time, got myself out of that state.
I mean, the pandemic had, as I said in the introduction, a severe impact on women's life, for example. All of a sudden, you see yourself, being home with kids. You need to do online school. You need to still work because that's what your employer is expecting from you. But at the same time, you kind of still need to attend to yourself, but you have no time. Like it's that spiral you're talking about that you or it's like a hamster wheel. It goes on and on and on and on and on and on, and you in the moment cannot even see that there's something wrong. And many, including me, in these especially lockdown phases that were really, really difficult personally and from a social perspective, and also the fear of losing your job. You need to deliver, show up on Zoom, show up on Teams, just to prove you're willing to make this work. But that takes so much energy. It sucks out the energy. And in hindsight, I quit my job because I just felt, okay, guys, there's much more important things in life. I've realized through the pandemic, I don't want to spend my days with something that I don't really enjoy. I mean, it's nice, you have nice colleagues, you have a good salary, that's all good. But in the end, does that really give you purpose? And does it give you the space you need personally for self-care, for growth, for inspiration, for your spirituality? So I love how you connect all that with your personal experience in your book and what you took away from a really difficult time in your life. And tell us how, I mean, you left Germany, or you're in South Africa, right? You're not in Germany anymore.
Yeah, no, I've left. I mean, first of all, thank you for saying all these beautiful things. And I can add on to that because for me, I'd left my job at that point when the pandemic started. So on the one hand, really big challenge because I suddenly was without a job and I was in the prime phase of even just the starting phase of founding my business. So that was definitely an additional challenge. But you also said something important. And for me, my old job was, I loved my job. And I always love sharing that with people. And I always express it in a way that I say, I left my dream job for a bigger dream. And that might sound easier to just leave your job because you like your job, or leaving your job because you don't like it, but actually really thinking about, okay, no, I really, really like this. I really love my colleagues. I really love the company I was working with. I loved my client. And still then forcing yourself to do that step. We both know our brain is not going to help us when to take that step. Our brain is going to try everything to actually stop us. And that's also why when I was actually leaving my job, I was experiencing similar symptoms that I was experiencing now when the pandemic sucked me into the spiral. Obviously now it was way, way worse, but it was a good ground to compare certain symptoms on. And I hope with sharing all of this, that's also a strength of my book, that obviously I share it on my personal story, but I really break it down into categories. I really make it easy to understand what variety of symptoms are there, what can actually happen, reading through it and understanding, okay, oh, I experienced that as well. And I didn't acknowledge, I told myself that it wasn't that bad. And actually then understanding, no, there might be more that was just hidden to me, and I might have to do the work now. And then really not leaving you sitting there, but guiding you through that process and helping you through that journey. So the book is from the starting point to that end point of actually getting you to that positive glow again. And that now for me is my life here. So to answer that question, I mean, my big move, I can already share that. My big move was for me to change my environment. And that's a big turning point in the book. And that was for me leaving Germany for good, for now, for good. And I came to Cape Town then last year already in April. And the first months just took that time for personal healing, just for taking very slow steps. Every single time when I could feel you're pushing yourself too much, taking a step back, reevaluating, reassessing every single day, daily check-ins. I still do that. I believe that's the core of your inner balance, to do these daily check-ins and really assess how are you feeling today, and also allow for flexibility and allow for flexibility in the moment. So one of the most important things I always keep sharing is that you've got the right to cancel things as well. Because just one example, because commitments that you've made in a moment a couple of days ago, you made those commitments from a different energy state. You'll find yourself in a different energy state yet again. And you have the right to act upon that. You have the right to listen to yourself, if possible. Of course, sometimes there's commitments that you can't change, but you have the right to listen to yourself first and then act upon that.
Yeah, and I love that, because you really find yourself, a lot of people want to meet up now in big groups because we've been deprived of that for such a long time. But there is this crippling anxiety that feels like, can I do this? I'm not sure, with my kids, with like so many people, and okay, I just do it because everyone is coming to that big party. But if you don't feel like, don't go, because you're not going to enjoy it. And there is a step-by-step approach you can take. You don't need to meet with 20 people at once. Meet with a couple, meet with one friend that you have not met for a long time, meet outside. But do it on your terms, so that you go through that, as you said, healing of the past 2 years, because your nervous system remembers that stuff. Your nervous system remembers what happened, even though your conscious mind might not, because you try so much to isolate yourself from what has happened, but it will come up. And I love how you
and I touch upon that on a sensual level as well in the book, because it's not just rationally thinking, okay, how comfortable am I feeling with it? But for me, the first weeks in Cape Town, I was completely overstimulated. Even just being in a room with more people, my brain wasn't used to that anymore. So I wasn't used to actually taking in all those external stimuli and this external information. It was kind of like my brain had unlearned how to decode all this information. And I needed to get myself back to a level where I was actually able to function again. And that is something that was really severe for me, definitely, absolutely.
Crazy what the mind does, isn't it?
Yeah. And it happens on so many levels. And that is why, of course, I shared all of that in my keynotes last year already. And that also got me to the point that, seriously, with the book, it wasn't strategically planned. I always keep saying subconsciously, I knew probably for a while, and then I just consciously realized it. But I honestly was waking up one morning and then just realized, okay, you got to do this. This is something so important to share, and so important to share it now. I mean, I also self-published my book just to be able to get it out there as soon as possible for people to be able to read the story and find comfort in the story, find new faith in the story. And I mean, I've had so many conversations, and people who know me personally, they would have never thought that something like that, it's always there's something like that happens to you. And there was also a resistance, of course, in putting the book together. So there's so much mental work involved there as well to even bring this story to life in the form of a book. And now finding me at this place, it's already getting so rewarding of getting feedback, of people telling me how they even wanted to contact me in the middle of the night because they found so much comfort in it and they felt so understood. And really, for the first time, felt like someone was there who understood. And that's one of the worst feelings in these crisis times. You feel so alone. You feel like no one understands your pain. For me, that was a lot because this global citizen just always out in the world. And even with that compared, not many people couldn't understand that positive drive. So how would they be able now to understand the suffering side? Because they wouldn't even understand the pain of that, for example, just to bring across one example. And that's the worst feeling, because it makes you feel so alone and it feels like there's no way out, basically. I mean, I found comfort in journaling. Then I picked up my journal again and I journaled every morning, and that was my big companion and my big partner for the day, to start the day like that and to find comfort in that and find safety in that. And I believe that's also one major tool that then helped me to build up more strength over time, to then actually integrate more mind tools. Because let's be honest, we know mind work is not easy work. You got to make the active choice to work with your mind. The outcome you're going to get is exhilarating. It's absolutely beautiful, wonderful, and the most exhilarating feeling of aliveness. But you have to get yourself there.
Yeah.
And I think the question is, how much are you willing to invest into yourself?
Yeah. I love how you recognize and appreciate from yourself to become vulnerable to the public is something important to help others with. And this is really the essence of this podcast here, is that we share. It doesn't always, even if it looks bright, and if we put all together and it seems like we have it all together and we manage to go through the crisis, this is not reality, because many of us are just afraid to open up and to show how we really feel, for being afraid of being judged, mistreated, put in a box. But exactly when we become vulnerable and show up as humans, this is when we make an impact in the world and with others. And I love that you do that with your book. It's very brave. And I have one question. You, as a mental health expert, how do you see the future and the possibilities of mental health?
I see so much exciting potential for the future. I mean, for me, you introduced me already so kindly in the beginning. My business is completely focused on online work. So it's a global business and completely specialized in doing these online therapy sessions and also developing virtual mental health solutions. Because my main mission is to make this psychological support accessible to everyone. Because we have the technology, we shouldn't have any limitation why people would not be able to get this kind of support. And that's also something that my clients very much appreciate, the turnaround time of actually contacting you, and you will make similar experiences with your clients, contacting you and then actually getting to work. So I think the fastest time I had was like 3 days or 4 days, if even. And she is so appreciative about that work, because she kept saying and saying again that she needed it in that moment. And just imagine during the normal therapy process of having to do the research and having to set up an appointment. There's so much resistance happening because you have to go there, people might find out and all of that. And this online work, it's so easy. You send an email and it's basically done. It's even easier with the book. If you don't want anyone to know, download it. No one ever has to know that you read it. And it's going to help you so tremendously. So I see a lot of potential in technology. I'm really excited about that, to see how you can actually make this mental work accessible to more people by maybe collaborating in ways that you can actually, because you just need a device, you could even just use your phone and you just need a connection, or you just need data. You don't even need a Wi-Fi connection. It can just be mobile data. And finding ways to expand that network more, to bring it to people who also geographically can't really travel to therapy sessions and can't really go to a practice room or something. That is something that has me in a lot of excitement for the future. And also integrating just digital analysis. So working with data that we are collecting about people and that we're giving out from ourselves every day. I always though keep saying, and now obviously we're entering the metaverse phase and all of that, with Facebook becoming Meta and all the digital rooms popping up and all of that. And I always keep saying though that I see a lot of danger in there, because there is potential for positive things. And also for me, thinking I've got this mental health hub, which is a members area. So there is potential for me to integrate certain things in there that would be of a positive effect. But I see a lot of danger in analyzing too much. For example, I don't have a smartwatch or anything. I don't want for a technical device to condition myself and condition my day, basically. So I do appreciate some analysis about my performance as a human being, but I see a lot of danger in those sleep tracking devices, just smartwatches and all of that. It can flip around very easily if you're not able to control your mind. And if you've never done any work with your mind, then it's just completely basically commanding you what to do. And
it's interesting that you say that, because I have a smartwatch.
Yeah.
And when I received my smartwatch, I had time to cycle to the office, which meant 4 or 5 times a week, I would cycle 10 kilometers per day. And then there was the pandemic, and I couldn't cycle like 10 kilometers per day. And my whole lifestyle changed. My watch kept telling me how bad I was doing. Like, you need to get back on track, Stefanie. Your arrows are showing down. You are not like doing the best for your body. And I was like, I'm trying to survive here, you know? This is not helping.
Yeah. And that's what I also say about, maybe as a final point, that's what I always say about all these mental strategies and tools as well. If I, for example, with my journaling, I allow for, I always call it controlled flexibility. So if I really can't make it one day, then there is no point in forcing it onto me, because that's going to create negative energy and negative pressure. And then I've actually flipped the effect of what this is supposed to do for me. But with the journaling, for example, I then do it one day later. And so I think you always have to, and that's where the daily check-ins come in. You always have to monitor what is something doing for you. And if you realize then it's actually adding onto your list of, oh, I have to get this done today, oh, damn it, then reassess and maybe take a break, because you're at the flipping point and that's not good for you.
No, that's true. You have so many gems to share here. That's amazing. How can people actually reach you
for limited time? You can definitely find me easily on my website. So my name, Lisa Zimmermann, and a catchy phrase to remember what my website's name is don't look for any Lisa Zimmermann, but for the Lisa Zimmermann, THE, Lisa Zimmermann. There were so many out there, so I had to come up with an interesting solution. So thelisazimmermann.com is my website, and then the Lisa Zimmermann with THE, Lisa Zimmermann, for all the social channels as well. And I guess that's the easiest way to find me. You can find the book link in there as well. You can also find it on my website under the submenu shop. But you are also integrating it in the show notes, right? And we're offering a special code as well for the audience.
Yes, to make sure, guys, that you get the book and read it. it will help you so much to understand yourself from the past 2 years and to make sense of what has happened to you. There's a way out. Thank you so much for sharing your inspiring and timely story today with us, Lisa.
Thank you so much for having me. It was such an energetic conversations, and I'm really glad that we connected on this level. Thank you so much.
I'm convinced that your story will help other women to find the strength and hope they need to overcome the psychological effects this pandemic has on them. And guys, if you like this episode, give me a like and a review and share it with anyone you think can benefit from listening to Lisa's stories. We are all affected by the pandemic in one way or the other. Until next time at Raw and Real with Stefanie Fernandes. Bye now.
Bye.